really fortunate to be blessed with a pregnancy when you start trying to have children. Dr. Donkerberg was doing the ultrasound with Kathryn, and it was like, yeah, you're having twins. And it was something that was very much unexpected, but it was also a blessing in many ways.
We would go to the perinatalogist as often as I would go see the OB, and they would track and measure, and it was, well, I think it was in the second trimester when they started to see a difference. But it wasn't concerning because Mack was still growing, he just wasn't growing, he wasn't as big. I was running errands or something, and I just didn't feel very good, so I called my OB and talked to the nurse, and she was like, why don't you just come to Presby? And I called Steve and I was like, hey, I'm going in, it's gonna be fine. I think they just wanna make sure everything's okay. I was just on bed rest for a week in the hospital. I had gone in to go see my perinatalogist again to check, to make sure everything looked good, and he was like, they need to come out today because Mack's fluid had started decreasing.
So that was the first moment that we thought or even had any clue that maybe something was wrong, and because nothing to that point really was wrong.
Because I think the main thing that the specialist told us was that basically we're taking them because they would thrive better outside of the womb than inside of the womb.
The longest moment for me that I'll ever remember was being in the prep room with Kathryn, and they took her away into the OR, and they said, hey, it'll be 5 or 7 minutes. It felt like 3 hours, that something was wrong. And when Mack came out first, and it didn't hit me until I was trying to get the camera and get it to focus, and the OB said, take the picture, he's not breathing. And then even when you walk over to the scale, and they're weighing him, and Mack weighed 2 pounds, 11 ounces. And thinking the whole time that he was 5 pounds. And then Betty comes out and she's 4 pounds, 9 ounces, and you thought she was closer to 8 pounds.
Right.
So we were with Mack and Betty on that elevator, and you have your son there, and they're giving him the mask, and they're pumping air in those lungs, and you've got your daughter, they got tubes in them, and everything's with it. I could feel myself starting to not lose it, but to kind of like not have the same perspective that I knew that I needed to have with it. And in the NICU at Dallas Presbyterian, there's all these pictures of these kids. But for whatever reason, I stopped and looked at one picture. And the one picture I looked at was a little boy named Mack. And his birthday was 2 pounds, 11 ounces. The calmness that gave me, and just the randomness of that, was something that I will never forget. And when you leave the NICU and you leave your child in the hospital, that's not something that anyone wants to do. That's not something the way that you envision it. And again, she handled it so well. I'm so proud of her and appreciate her for a lot of different levels for that.
But I would go up at least, I would say 3 or 4 times a day. It was hard, but it was kind of nice because I was able to spend a little bit of time with both babies, at different times, one-on-one.
So Mack is still smaller, and that's probably part of it. He'll catch up. He's not a huge eater. That's okay. But in regards to physical development, mentally, emotionally, they thrive.
They're perfectly healthy in every way.
Our children wouldn't be here without the March of Dimes. I'm a partner and vice president in the benefits consulting firm of Lockton Dunny Benefits. And what we do is that employers retain us and our services to help them manage their employee benefit spend. So what we're seeing specifically around premature birth isn't necessarily the frequency of premature children, it's the severity of those claims. We saw our first $7 million baby last month, and we recognize it more and more of what that presents to our clients and the cost pressures of that. And we all share in that cost. Not-for-profits, there's not a lot of causes that have actually accomplished their mission. The March of Dimes accomplished their mission. We eradicated polio. And so the reality of it is that we're all March of Dimes babies, that we've all had a polio vaccine. We still don't know what triggers labor. We still don't know a lot of things that we're trying to figure out that the March of Dimes is funding. And so now the next step that we can accomplish together is that we can prevent prematurity, and that you can do it for the families that have to go through that on a personal level, they go through it, But we're all invested in it very much so from a financial perspective. And it's not just the March of Dimes. It's all of us. And it needs all of us to be behind it and supporting it, what we do to prevent prematurity.